subjects. You know, I mean, you remember when you and I were looking at that. We were talking to Jr. and we were looking at his college course
Oh,
website,
yeah.
and it's like
Yeah,
half the
wow.
classes are just opinion 101,
Right,
where
yeah.
you just listen to some asshole professor say, okay, here's what I think about this, and a lot of it is like fringe opinion, and it's like these classes can't be terribly challenging. You just got to listen to
No.
some asshole brainwash you.
Yeah, you just got to agree with the professor and whatever he's espousing, and
Yeah,
there you go. Mhm.
yeah, exactly. It's and I think, look, and
Oh,
so I point out to these
I'm
people.
sorry.
Yeah,
He or she. He or she.
yeah.
No,
Well, you didn't say Professor S, so that's granted.
okay.
But anyway,
But I'm gonna start anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't they call them Officer S's?
Office arrest. Shit.
Remember that? Anyway, so I say, okay, well, look, if women have access to the resources that they need to go to college, more so apparently than men, uh, then it's their own fault or choice, whatever. It's their own responsibility if they study garbage instead of studying technical stuff that would get them into fields like biologist or engineer or whatever, right? And the answer I get is just this magnificent 7-10 split where they manage to just layer their hypocrisy on itself in this beautiful manner. Is, first of all, they'll say, well, it's not necessarily that women have more resources. Young men are just, making bad decisions. But as far as women not making the higher fields, not studying, it's because society tells them. So I thought, okay, great. In one fell swoop, you have held men in that age group completely 100% responsible for their actions if they don't attain a higher education, and you have completely stripped women in the same age group of all responsibility for choosing their majors. Congratulations, take a fucking bow. You are a complete and total brainwashed hypocrite.
That's a weird fucking attitude to have because there's a lot of similar attitudes, not just when it comes to women, but when it comes to any group that people feel they need to defend. They dehumanize the fuck out of people by the way they talk about them.
Yeah.
As if they're completely incapable of any fucking thing. And it's such a weird thing. Like, you don't hear yourself doing that? You don't hear yourself talking about these people like they're not shit?
Well, you're an MRA. You sound exactly like them.
Well, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
Do they usually sound right? Because I sound pretty fucking right. But it's it's to me that's such a weird thing to do. Like you do this thing where you're like, well, women can do this and they should be able to do that, and then you tell me they can't.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck is that? You don't hear that? But and the other part is the question that I have and will forever have for everyone, and nobody ever answers it, of course. You go like somebody will make a statement like women have no advantages, men have every advantage. If they say something like that, you go, you can't be serious. Like, you're wrong. Like, that statement is false, right?
Yeah.
If I said the opposite of that men have every disadvantage, women have every advantage, that would be false. Like, you can't just say shit like that. Like, where do you fucking get off doing that? I couldn't imagine. Like, that has to be, like, for me, that would be so fucking unsatisfying to just be wrong. And start, and just start with a faulty fucking premise. It's like, listen, it's like, I think your analogy was perfect about, like, you have attributes, like in an RPG. That's life. That's every fucking person has the deck stacked against them in some area and not in others. Sometimes you get the good cards, right? And there's examples of that in most everyone's fucking life, right? Doesn't matter, I mean, some people might come from really fucking dirt poor family and they start off fucked. They don't have the financial advantage. Fine, right? And some people start off rich and then so on and so forth. Men have certain advantages. Women have certain advantages. Just acknowledge those, and that's all you have to do.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
It's like, okay, the person in the rich family is far more likely to go to college.
Sure.
The poor person can score drugs a lot easier. Everybody has advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah, the poor person is definitely more likely to develop an expensive and dangerous crack habit. It's fucking good for them. Jesus. No, but I don't know. I don't. Again, just allergic to nuance. That's the fucking phrase of the day because it seems like everyone is, and it's such a fucking bummer. Like, I mean, I don't really see anything interesting anymore. I haven't seen a fucking video on YouTube that I have watched and thought to myself, now that's an interesting perspective. That has not fucking happened to me in a long time, and that happened before, like, quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting any fucking smarter. I've got news. Okay, it's that your videos are getting shittier and more predictable, and it's fucking depressing. So, there's that. What a bummer. You're all just a real fucking disappointment, except for the people who are in our audience who are watching.
Yeah.
You guys are great. Fan-fucking-tastic. You should comment more. Give me something to ridicule you for. Leave a comment.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing is, I wish more people would have the integrity to come up to you and say, hey, Sarahan, hold still. I'm going to piss on your leg.
Right.
Don't. It's like, no. They're always going to tell you it's really warm rain. It's just the warmest rain you ever felt, right? Nobody has the integrity to come up and say, hey, I'm going to piss on your leg.
And meanwhile, I just walk around smelling like piss.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah, asking everyone if they can believe this, how how heavy and very localized this rain is, and they don't know what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Because like again, going back to the Radfems, you talk to them and you say, okay, well, so they'll say, okay, well, there's so few women in all these coveted fields, and I'll say, yeah, but there's a lot of women in college, so they certainly have the opportunity to do it. They're just not doing it, and or some other advantage that women have, and they'll say, well, women are so historically disadvantaged, and now a little premise laying here. These are the same people who say, well, feminism has only ever been about, and only ever will be about equality. That's it, equality, nothing else. That's all it's about. And then these same people, if you can point out an area where they have a clear double standard, they'll say, well, it's historically women have suffered so much. I'm like, look, it doesn't matter if you think you have a good reason for your double standard. It's still a double standard. You know what I mean? It's like if you think that there's some other advantage that you're compensating for and you're giving women kind of a handicap, that doesn't matter because it's still a fucking double standard. And I've been on the exact other side of this issue, arguing with religious people, specifically Muslims, right? Because they would say, oh, Islam promotes equality between the genders. And I'm like, well, that's news to me. Please explain. and it's like, again, they don't have, they're like, these are like Western, very liberal Muslims, right? These people aren't with ISIS, these people will never kill anyone. They're just idiots, and they're like, yeah, it's totally equality between the genders. And I'll say, okay, well, what about this passage from your scripture that says that, under many circumstances, females will get half the inheritance of the male, right?
Yeah.
Show me a diagram where equal and half are the same thing, right? Where 1 is equal to 1/2, or where 1 is equal to 2, right? And they'll say, okay, well, here's the thing. In those days, it was important for the male to blah, 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 blah. I'm suddenly a history major, blah, 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 right?
Right.
And I'll say, look, it doesn't matter whether you think there's an important reason for the double standard. It's still a fucking double standard. It is not by any stretch of the imagination equal, okay? You should have just said, we have a double standard and we feel there's a good reason. You should have just said, hold still, I'm going to piss on your fucking leg. That's all.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. And the thing that... What is this thing that people do where they acknowledge, like, the shittiness of whatever principle it is that's in their holy book, and then they sort of start out by acknowledging that it sucks, but then try to justify it somehow.
Yeah.
What happened to that thing that people are supposed to do where they acknowledge that something sucks and they just walk away from it?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck happened to that? Like, why
oh,
are you
dude, G-Man, G-Man actually owned up. He's one of the few theists ever that I've talked to who, I should say Christians, who owned up to the 50 shekels you must be mad verse in the Old Testament, right? In Deuteronomy, there's a verse that says, okay, if a man rapes a woman, he has to pay 50 shekels to her father, and then they have to marry each other. And they
Jesus, you couldn't even give the shekels to the woman. You fucking had to pay her dad.
And you know, yeah, that's the fucked up thing. Is because like in Game of Thrones again, there's this spoiler alert, but anyway, there's this group of slave warriors called the Unsullied, right? And they're trained basically since they're kidnapped from childhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's this huge mortality rate because the training is so deadly and so forth. And so they're trained, and one of the last steps of their training is they have to sneak into the marketplace in this slave city where, you know, their major cash crop is training different kinds of slaves, warriors, concubines, and so forth, whatever, laborers, anything, right? So they sneak down into this slave market where there's, slave, residents of the city, and they take a baby from the arms of their mother and stab it right in front of her. And this shows that they just don't flinch in the face of taking a life. And they take a single silver piece with them. And this one girl from across the sea, anyway, this one girl's like, okay, well, that's horrible. And all she gets is a silver for the life of her child. And the slave master tells the translator, it's like, tell this stupid cunt that the silver is not for the mother, it is for the owner of the mother. And that's exactly what the fucking Old Testament says. You hit the nail. It's that money's for her father, right?
Jesus.
Yeah. And anyway, so he owned up to it and said, "Oh, well, it's actually a harder penalty on the rapist than it is on the rape victim." I thought, wow, okay, sure. I certainly have never thought of it that way. That you can say that about this discussion, is you've presented this information in a way that I have never thought about it. And I thought, there it is, right there. There it is, right there. It's like this guy who normally, I mean, he seemed friendly enough, and he had this kind of goofy disposition, and was one of the more civil theists I'd ever talked to. And yet, look what he was willing to sign off on.
Right.
You know what I mean? He may not have a violent or dishonest bone in his own body for his own purposes. I don't know him that well. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit.
Yeah.
But look what he's willing to sign off on.
Sure. Yeah. That is interesting.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. But yeah, every time I think of that verse, I just think of that Life of Brian sketch where he's like, 50 shekels, you must be mad. I can just imagine the rapist trying to haggle. It's like,
right.
Okay,
right.
Okay, 20 shekels and a goat. No. 20 shekels, 2 goats, and then that old horse you have. Like, come on. Come the fuck on. Actually, what that reminds me of? Have you ever seen a comic strip called Awkward Zombie?
I have not.
Oh, it's pretty funny. It doesn't update too frequently, but it's like situational comedy, almost like a Penny Arcade thing about games. And they have some real funny ones. They did a couple about Civilization 5. Have you ever played any of the Civ games?
No. Nope.
Oh, well, anyway, I had an idea. They had a couple about that, and it was just funny because the negotiating scenario I was just talking about, you'll be at war with these nations or dealing with them or whatever, and of course, like any other thing that has AI, it's never going to be realistic, and you have these comical situations. And I'll be at war with someone and just kicking the shit out of them and bombarding them with cannon fire from the sea, and finally we come to a negotiation where it's like, I get 2 of your cities in exchange for 10 turns of peace. And they're like, okay, we don't really have a choice at this point. And then I'll come back later, like a couple turns later, and I'll be like, hey, now that we're friends, do you want to do some trading? And they're like, fine, what do you want? And he'll say, hey, could I get some like lobster from you or some shit? I need to boost my civilization's happiness with luxury goods. And they're like, yeah, sure, we'll give you some lobster. But we want a lump sum of gold, payment of gold every turn, diamonds, gems, oil, coal, iron, and all this shit. And I'm like, dude, be more passive aggressive. Fuck.
Yeah, no, it's everything's so simple, and you know, in some of these RPGs, like somebody had put on the Skyrim Reddit the other day. It's like, you know, Skyrim on friendship was the title of the post, and then it's a loading screen where it says, if you make friends with people, they'll let you take stuff from their house.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like that's the simplicity of why you should make friends, just so I could take shit from them. And there's no fucking bullshit about, you know, the value of friendship. It's just like, there's stuff, you want it, be nice. All right, you know, that's the fucking rule. Shit.
Yeah, there's a lot of Elder Scrolls based comics on that site. One has their like, oh yeah, you a lot of them are very visual, so it's hard to make them funny just from relating them. But one has her character kind of skittering around in some abandoned shopping mall, and she's like, you know, always in crouch with this little fiendish look in her eyes. And some guy walks in, like part of the Brotherhood of Steel, and walks up. She's like eating a bunch of like old rotten food, and then picks his pocket, takes his wallet, and then the guy finally reacts to her presence. He's like, "It's an honor to meet you, sir. I've heard about your great deeds."
Yeah, I love that kind of shit. Yeah, I always harass the preacher guy at in Whiterun. I always give him a nice ration of shit. Like to shout him down every once in a while. That guy's always funny to me. There was a guy on YouTube that used to do soundboard prank calls with the Skyrim NPCs it was pretty goddamn funny. He made some girl cry with Alduin, you know, the dragon. Yeah. You know, he's like saying, and she's just like, "No, mom," you know, and she's like fucking freaking out. Oh man, yeah, I was like, yeah, that's dickish, man. Like you should have probably pulled the plug right on that one, you know.
So this is a little girl. When you first said some girl cry.
Oh no,
some people use girl like up to 29. You know,
right.
I thought it was that kind of situation.
You know what? I think it depends on the girl, like whether or not you use girl.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Shit.
That's another thing. Is like is women and crying. I mean, it's like for people who like pretend. For people who
this
like.
This is gonna be a great rant.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Women and their fucking crying. That's where we're starting.
It reminds me of Bill Burr. Bill Burr with his rant, and he's like carrying on this conversation with himself. It's like and he's like yelling at this woman. He's like, "Oh, with the tears."
Yeah.
In Game of Thrones, Cersei Lannister, who's like this evil queen type, like a soap opera villain kind of character. She's talking to this other young girl, and she says, "A woman's weapon are her tears. That's a woman's weapon." And then she stops and she thinks about it for a moment, and she says, "But men's weapons are swords." That basically says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, Jesus.
And it was a really funny moment, but she says that on a couple occasions. And what's weird is, I mean, I feel bad for women that they are more prone to crying against their will, you know. And let's face it, they are. Anyone who denies it is living on another fucking planet, right?
Or they're keeping some interesting company.
But the thing is, the thing about using tears as a weapon is really true, okay? Because they're just permitted to cry in situations where we would just be the subject of ridicule, right?
Oh shit, yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you're never allowed to do that shit. No.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I don't care how many people pay lip service to the sensitive male thing. Nobody actually fucking believes in that.
No. You'll get instantly shit on. If that's you get shit on. That's absolutely true. Like I've never heard that guy talked about in a good way. I've never heard a lot of really nice things being said about that person, because everybody has encountered that person, and all you hear are people shitting on him. He's never getting laid. All his male buddies are fucking ridiculing him mercilessly, and behind his back, of course.
Yeah.
And when it's convenient, people will talk about what a nice, swell guy is. Yeah. But it never means anything. It's like the whole, just be nice. Just be a nice guy. And nobody, I don't know what that is.